You're listening to Instant Speed Podcast with your lovely host, Flake Matt DeMarco, and me, the special guest, Ethan Mansant Van Sant, coming at you with an amazing episode today. Stay tuned.
The Instant Speed Podcast is proudly sponsored by Kayfabe Cards. Kayfabe Cards is located in Riverton, Utah, and is your total hookup for Flesh and Blood singles and sealed product. Go to kayfabecards.com and find all of your TCG passions covered, from Magic, One Piece, Pokemon, and plenty more. Kayfabe Cards is also bringing you the Battle Hardened in Salt Lake City, as well as Pokemon Regionals in the coming year. Kayfabe is life. Be who you want to be. The Instant Speed Podcast welcomes a driving force of the Flesh and Blood community. He is responsible for great coverage that you see at many of the major Flesh and Blood events as part of Savage Feats, as well as being the bannerman for the League of Levia, waving that flag so proudly, Ethan, and for so long. And you must feel vindicated to a degree now.
Yes. There was so much toying that went on with me and James, my buddy James, with just be patient. I can't give you any details. Just see what's coming. But I think the patience really was rewarded here. I'm living the best life now. Levi is too. Our girl got redeemed. It's a great time. It's a great time to be a Levi player. Absolutely.
It feels that way. I would imagine that after a while, like you're long suffering. It's like I don't know how to explain it further than the fact that Tark's gonna hate me, but it's like being Toronto Maple Leafs fan. I know you're not a hockey fan, right? Yeah, mm-hmm. This is gonna go by 99%. But if you're listening, it's like being a Maple Leafs fan and then finally winning a round in the playoffs, which again, over everybody's head. That one's purely for Tark, but it's good to have you on board. There's a lot to get to, a lot to talk about. And initially, I just want to, let's start at the roots, because everybody knows who you are. Everybody probably has a good idea of what you're about and such, but the origin story, as it were, in terms of creating the League of Levia, where did that fandom begin?
Well, that's a great place to start, because I feel like the origin story of me is actually not that interesting. I opened a case, pulled a Doomsday, and that's that. That's the short version. But the League of Levia really was spawned off of the fact that when I went looking for Levia content, there just wasn't much, and there were tons of videos about Prism, about Chain, not so much about Bolton. He was definitely lacking as well when I kind of got into the game around Monarch. But Levia, to me, who in my little bubble back in Kalamazoo, Michigan, had been the driving force of why I even started playing this game, I was so excited, so passionate for this hero, and had that early placement, that top 4 road to Nats, that had other content creators kind of reaching out and wanting to do deck techs and stuff. When I started looking for more to kind of fill that void for myself as well, like, what am I going to talk about? Who can I look to learn from a little bit before I say yes to like Hometown TCG, who wanted an interview, for example? There just wasn't anything. So that was kind of the little seed that was planted of, well, hold up. If no one is the bannerman, like you so introduced me, then maybe it should be me, because I, like, at this point had the only first, like, I think the first and only placement actually back in that Road to Nat season. So I rode that high and kind of started up the League of Levia. It was just a small group of players at first, like I think 6 of us in a little Discord chat of people who were excited to talk about Levia, who had reached out, and that was really our little group. And then it became a Discord, and then on to now the 1,000 plus Discord that it's become, because Levia is so freaking cool now. But it was really just, I needed people to talk to. I wanted to speak about this hero before I even knew that no one else was, doing it yet.
sometimes
But
it just,
yeah, no.
it just comes down to that, where people seeking the same kind of community, whether it's, Flesh and Blood as a broader stroke of a community is one thing, but ultimately this is a game that I find is unique in that people will adhere to particular heroes themselves. In Magic, you'll have people who are like, oh, this is my color, or this is my guild, or whatever, and that's cool. But like when it comes to the lore behind it, I find that Flesh and Blood does it so well because there's actually a history of the character that you so passionately, essentially, tether yourself to. And this has got to be a long, painful road, because let's be real, you stuck through it thick or thin when it comes to Levia ever since that day. That fateful top 4 that kind of, I guess, solidified or validated your passion in that degree. Was it the top 4 that really said, you know what, that's it, like we're dug in?
I mean, I didn't feel that way. I was kind of tilted post-event because I only lost because I'd never played against Akatsu before. So I was like, man, I suck. Like, I can't beat this hero. I've never seen it before. Like, I need to, fill these gaps in my knowledge of this game, yada, yada. But to everyone else on the outside, it was the only placement that they could look at for Levia in the entirety of that RTN season. I was the only person in the world to get a Nationals invite on Levia, which is not to say a lot of people weren't fans of her. They just weren't placing with her yet, which did come later. So to be the first was just a bit of a fluke. I wasn't that good. I obviously didn't know how to even beat Akatsu, which had been in the game already for like a year plus. So I honestly forgot the question.
No, it was. Don't worry. Ultimately, like, I'm sure you've answered so many Levia questions over the time, like constantly. I don't want to pester you too much about it, but there's got to be, like I said, some vindication, a little bit of a pumping of the tires of Levia that occurred in Dusk Till Dawn. And I want to ask you, because the first thing that everybody kind of latched onto are always the new heroes, the resurgence of, or like the reappearance of Prism, this new hero Vincent. But Levia kind of, I don't want to say lurked in the background. Everybody was ready and rearing to go for Levia to do stuff, but they often will turn to you for your evaluation and your expertise with the hero. And I have to ask you, did Dusk Till Dawn do her right?
Well, I don't want to be just completely just supportive of like all the design choices of the new Levia cards, because some of them are very questionable and kind of lead me down just there's potential fears I have with this idea that Levia is fixed just with the demi hero alone, to the point where maybe the rest of her cards are kind of docked that power level where we saw before of her getting cards that were 1 or 2 points above the normal value curve, to now what we see in Dusk Till Dawn with the like hand banishing cards, the whole suite that's really similar to Rhinar stuff, that's really like copy paste but banish instead of discard. Those cards are not above rate in any capacity, and that's a bit worrisome, because Levia needed her above rate plays to balance out the fact that she had blood debt before. But if now the design of Levia is built around, oh, well, she doesn't really have the downside, because now there's a bit of an upside to this whole blood debt playstyle with the demi hero, they can just kind of add those super mediocre cards now.
Right.
That's a little scary, because if all they do is add these mediocre cards, then we'll just be playing the original Levia core of cards for all eternity, because they're the best ones, right? That's a little fearsome for me. I don't love that. Couple Majestics stand out, obviously. Slithering Shadowpeed, which should be Skittering Shadowpeed, just by the way. It's got all those legs skitter. They don't slither, just saying. That card does stand out because it's obviously just a card with upside. 1 for 6 is already great. Banish it with Art of War. Just pure upside, it's playable. And then, of course, the Demi hero being the creme de la creme of this set. Can't ignore it. So powerful. The fact that it exists changes every decision you make from turn 0 onwards for a Levia player, which really feels rewarding, because it was such a deck that took such minutia to play to not just like punt games out of nowhere. And now those like small decisions that Levia players got used to before have payoff, and also kind of stem into their own directions of, well, I planned for a consumed game. Maybe it's a redeemed game. Maybe I give up on consumed because like I need to present lethal in my next hand, and playing defensive to like protect the flip like isn't what actually needs to happen in this position, even though it's an aggro game, like blah blah blah. There's so much you can do with that card just branching all these decisions now. So there's a huge win, right? Obviously, Demi Hero huge, but then the majority of the card pool is just nothing.
It kind of falls flat, I feel, and I completely feel for you there, because if we were to sort of equate this to maybe heroes that people are a little bit more familiar with or who have been prowling the meta for quite a while now, if we talk about Lexi, for example, what happened with Outsiders, the codexes, and just pumping Lexi up to a pretty powerful level, making her the premier deck in most tournaments, you feel like once that happens, once she gets those pieces and she's sort of propelled up to where she is, developers will say, okay, that's enough. Like, she's good. She shouldn't get anything more, and that would probably dissuade them from actually printing more strong Ranger cards. Do you fear like this is the path maybe where Levia is, where people or like the developers might say, okay, here is, like you said, a solution to a major downside problem, so she should not get any more help? Like, this was as much a Levia set as it was a set for Shadow and Light and everything else. This was essentially, she just kind of came out of the shadows to say, hey, I'm actually probably the beneficiary of this entire set. Screw Vincent, screw Prism. This is the deck to play. But there's got to be some long-standing fears that you have, like you mentioned, that she's just going to get gooned from here on out and completely ignored.
Yeah, I think the one thing that gives me kind of more short-term hope is, in theory, the Savage Land set should be coming relatively soon, because there aren't that many regions left to like fully explore yet. There's like Savage Lands, there's Metrics, right? So, well, Mysteria, okay, so like 3. So in theory, a Savage Land set is pretty close, maybe within a year or so. And seeing what more generic brute support will do, that is obviously intended to like kind of juice up that class, a class that is, I mean, vanilla Rhinar is just kind of been a deck. It's never been the best deck. They will give, I would hope, that class like the Codex level cards. They would go that way for generic brute. Can Levia kind of marry into what those cards are doing to support her Shadow Brute playstyle, or are they going to be completely separate camps? That's a bit of a question. She doesn't use too much of the Rhinar kit other than like the draw discards. So I think once we see what that set does, I'll kind of know where I stand on like what I expect for future Levia support. Because if there is any marrying to be had, that's exciting, obviously. But for Levia specific support, I think we've seen the best already. We're not going to get better than the Demi Hero. That's like the solve. She's got her great cards from release.
Yeah.
And everything forward is just going to be not as good.
That's the thing. And it like, you have to also think to a degree where if they kind of whiffed on this set and just Levia still was garbage, like, I don't want to say garbage, but like she just didn't get the help that she needed in order to solve a lot of those problems or to address a lot of the concerns that the Levia players had. There's got to be a situation where you'd still probably not see it, or they would just sort of weasel in a Majestic or two in a future supplementary set to say, all right, like maybe this will do it, or maybe this will do it. But to me, I felt like there's the next sort of bastard child in Wraith is any mechanologist, frankly. It's Dash, you know, like Dash got some good pieces here or there, got interesting cards, the Mechanoid and you know, Pulse Wave Harpoon and things like that. But are you content with this set? Like, would you say that this set is just like, all right, you know, all your future worries aside, is this set satisfactory to you?
I mean, I can't say no. I have to be happy, you know. It's been 2 years of pretty much nothing, of like forcing in. I mean, I didn't even force in gore belching. I tried, like when they gave me that card. I tried to pretend that was a Levia card. But now we actually have the Levia set. I'm not going to be upset about it. I mean, there's still a lot to explore. Maybe there is some build that can fall back on like the Rhinar-esque cards that were given to us. I don't see that being more powerful than what I'm already exploring, but it is just different in entirety, and maybe it supports a different engine that just I haven't seen yet. So there's just, yeah, there's more to explore. And because of that, the fact that like Shaden Death Hydra is so cool, right? But like no one's really cracked the build for that yet. There's gonna be more that we just haven't seen. So I'm excited. The Demi Hero, the fact that is obviously going to be in every Levia deck and stemming all those decision trees I talked about, that is just so exciting to sit down and just have that adaptable game plan be there, is going to make any Levia build you ever put together now so much more fun than it ever was, and also obviously lowers the frustration level that used to be there. So obviously great. I have to say it.
The other question would be the new hero, the demi hero. Obviously, like you said, it's a solution, but it also offers a lot of a couple extra sort of branches in the decision tree of how to approach it. That gives you options for late game. It's not merely a matter of protecting against blood debt or things like that. There's actual options here. But is there any other key elements from the new cards and the new direction that Levia is going that you could attribute to this new success or this new ascension into, I don't want to say relevance, but like ascension into the conversation of potentially being in that top tier of the meta?
Oh, come on. You can say relevance.
I will say relevance. I'll say
Give me that.
I will say it merely because legitimately I have seen every tournament breakdown of heroes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And there's always one, there's always two. And if it's not one, it's two. And if it's one, it's you. Like that's usually how it goes when it goes to like these tournament number breakdowns for certain aspects. So I didn't want to say relevance because every hero is relevant when in reality they're not. But like, you know what I mean?
Like, come on, you were just at Chicago. Can I remind you what hero showed up back-to-back top 8s? I mean, there were a lot. You can say like, you can say drama, but it was also Levia. But it was also Levia, just by the way.
In the top 8s?
Jesse, and then Pat Eshke.
Yes. No,
my teammates.
The Levias definitely are showing up. So I'm not, but again, post Dusk Till Dawn. So I don't think I'm like completely off my rocker to say that she was essentially irrelevant for certain.
Yeah, before then, yes.
But that said, from the new set, what are the key elements that came with that set that you can attribute to her new ascension outside of, I would say, it's easy to say the demi hero, so like that's kind of the free pass here. But is there anything else?
Hero. Got you. I always used to say, even when Levia was objectively worse than she is now, when I won't say she was the worst deck.
You can't say, you don't have to say bad.
She was worse than now. She was worse than now. All right. Yeah. Back when that was the case, pre-Dusk Till Dawn, I always wondered what would happen if better players just took Levia to an event. Like they're not, because she has so many inherent risks, but like I'm there making top 64 at the Charlotte Calling, the one that was tied to Nats last year. I was out there making day 2 at every Pro Tour with Levia as well. Like, I didn't have like the crazy good results, but consistently was doing okay. And I felt like, if more people played her and we just played the numbers game a bit, some of us would have bad beats. Sure. It's a brute hero, bit more variance than in any other class. So some of us would just succumb to that, not make it. But if enough of us played it, enough of us in this player base of but also good enough players, right? Then someone would do well. Someone would make it. Someone would be the one who, at every critical juncture when they needed to like not draw the hand that missed blood debt or like, hit the critical scabs roll or whatever, someone would make it and have their hero journey. And it couldn't always be me because it was only me,
Yeah.
And by the numbers, like that just doesn't work. So I think for one, that does contribute to a lot of what we're seeing here. She's showing up, not in mass yet, but she's showing up with players who really believe in the power of the deck, like all of Team Runaways at the last previous battle-hardened Chicago weekend. There were 4 of us, very dedicated, like at this point, the other 3 very hardcore, grindy players. I'm trying to kind of ascend to that level a little bit for this season. But like Pat Eshke, Lucas Oswald, Jesse Kennan, they're taking Levia now. Dagan White as well was actually taking Levia from Team Ascent. And they're squeaking through. Not all of them, because she's still not certifiably like the best deck, the most consistent deck. She's not in that world. But when enough players show up and enough people kind of skip over those bad variant spots, one will make it. One will rise.
Well,
it wasn't me this last weekend.
No,
it was one of us.
It wasn't, but more people are giving it a shot. And I think that you make a very, astute point there when you say that just if more top level players were playing it, I think that a lot more people would actually give it a shot. Like somebody has to essentially, fly the flag, and it happened to be you, and you did so valiantly and like against a lot of odds. It's just that it wasn't a secret that it wasn't the best deck, but I think it was a secret that it wasn't the worst deck. Like, I honestly believe that everybody defaulted to Levia as being the worst deck in the field, when in reality, people just automatically think that if something isn't A tier or not B plus tier, then it's automatically garbage tier. Like, there's no in between. There's no room for improvement, or no room for that. But and in reality, I understand that aspect, because nobody wants to go into a tournament with one hand tied behind their back, despite the fact that they may be training like a god. But I can't sort of shake it out of my mind. Like, what you said is, as soon as you said that, the one thing I said, I'm like, damn right. Like, if a lot more people played it and put time into it, and actually, the cumulative like man hours that would go into solving metas or approaching certain matchups, you're only one person, and you had to put in all that work. I'm wondering if like there's I wouldn't call it resentment, but at a certain point you gotta be like, dude, I was there at the beginning. Like, everybody's jumping in now and thinking that they sort of found lightning in a bottle, when in reality it was there all along.
No, I don't have that feeling at all, because at least her introduction to relevancy, we're going to say it again, off the back of these last 3 top 8s, it was still like me behind those top 8s too. Not like 100%, obviously. I wasn't playing the deck, but I did build the deck. I did test with the team. I did talk to them extensively about like why this card, why that card, whatever. So honestly, shout out to Team Runaways for trusting me and like bringing me on for not necessarily that role. I was brought on more so for other reasons, content creation, help with draft, yada yada. But then the fact that Levia became more powerful in Dusk Till Dawn, we didn't know that when we started working together. But the fact that they, with all their experience, Dan Rakowski, top 4 Worlds player, were able to say, hey, like, lead us on Levia a little bit. To me, that is the hat tip moment. I feel very validated and appreciated, which is amazing. And while the top result has escaped me for now, Nats is coming. All right, Nats is coming. I can play Levia in all formats at Nats. Draft 2, CC, and we'll see what happens then. But these 3 top 8s so far, Pat Eschke twice, Jesse Kennan, I don't feel any resentment at all. Like, props to them. They're freaking doing it. They're killing it. And at the end of the day, the more excited they get about the hero, the better we'll all be for it. Because they're incredible players, and if they bombed, then they probably would stop listening to me. Yeah. But they're doing well. So now we all get to collab together again. New ideas,
Yeah, I think resentment was definitely not the word I should have used, or I wanted to insinuate. It was more so a matter of, like, maybe relief, I guess, could also be in there, where you're at the drawing board, you're in the lab, and you're working on this project forever. And then finally, after, the first few little tenets of success kind of bud out and whatnot, people are like, you know what, I want to see what's going on down there. And they kind of show up, and they finally start helping out and whatnot. And yeah, they were doing their own thing. And it's not an adversarial thing, but there's got to be a sense of like, welcome to the party. Like, where the hell have you been?
Sure. There is a little bit of that, I'll say, in some of the builds that I've been seeing that aren't so successful yet. And they're almost those, I can see myself in that thought process that these other people deck building were going through, like the Michael Hamilton list from Battlehardened Cincy, for example, the like value grindy with like rolling scabs for ghostly every turn, like full commitment to the Meat-Axe plan. I've tried all those things in the years previous, because those aren't necessarily the new cards, that's the stuff that we had to pretend was good enough to make it back in the day. And to see the top players like on their way in going through the thought processes of like, maybe this works, maybe this works, maybe this works. We'll see where they get to. I don't think they're quite all the way to understanding the hero in depth. It's very exploratory, obviously. She's a very new hero still. But for me, that's been like the funny moment. I get to kick back in the years of experience of like, oh, I know where they're at. I've been there. The line they see is a good one, but it just doesn't work quite as well. Like, I'm telling you.
I feel like you've just kind of ascended to the degree. It's like it's the same feeling of like the company, your startup that you've been working on forever, and it's the first time that you get to delegate duties and not do anything. Like, you get the CEO moment of like, no, dude, I just collect the paycheck now. Like, that's the beauty of it.
Oh, I wish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So talking about this kind of stuff and the fact that, it's on the radar now, and it was always an option, but for people who have limited amount of time to practice and want to go out there and succeed, it wasn't an attractive option. Now it is. And what kind of, I suppose, tips or let's start with this. What kind of player would Levia right now appeal to? Because there's a lot of people who might be listening to this and say, you know what, I don't even know if this is a hero for me, but I'm curious. So who are the types of players that would, really enjoy Levia right now?
So Levia is interesting because it's not so much that every hand of hers is a puzzle. I think if anything, her hands can be pretty linear. But what is a puzzle is literally the progression of the game state itself. Like what drawing this first hand does to now how you track the rest of where your power cards are, how you track, whether or not you're able to burn a card on turn 0, where your graveyard's at now, tracking where you're going to potentially flip now is another big one. There are so many pivotal decisions you need to. Actually, they're not even like pivotal. They're micro decisions across the entire length of a game that are not so much about just what cards did I draw. Oh, these cards are the good damage cards. Like that means I play them. You have to take multiple layers of decision making into account of, okay, this is a good hand, but it's a little too like push heavy on my graveyard. Like I can't clear it out yet. Like I need to slow down a little bit. So I can't go for like the Dread Boneyard play, which I really want to, because that's a banish 6 play. It's a 3-card 12, but it's a banish 6. I can't really support that in the graveyard. It'd run me too light. So let's scale it down. Let's just Boneyard Claw, Arsenal Dread, like whatever. All those decisions stem from something previous. Where did you get the graveyard fill, right? Where are you planning to make your push turn? And for me, that is what just addicts me to Levia. Like she is such a puzzle to play because it's not that the hands play themselves in any regard. And I played Fi for last Nat season, and that's mostly where I was at with Fi. What you focus on is how you play your hand. That's mainly what's going on there. You draw your hand, you want to make sure you optimize that hand. And you don't worry about much else. Levia, complete opposite. You do need to understand how to just breathe. Take some bad variants at times. I've gotten to the point where the only thing that tilts me out of my mind is Viscerai. I'm over the scabs. I'm over the non-block hands. It's funny. It happens. I still can't get over my absolute tilt when I face a Viscerai. But it was a long journey. It's a long journey. Getting frustrated after scabs rolls, some people, I mean, it's a problem. It can be a problem, but it goes both ways, because if you're rolling hot, then your opponent is super salty about it. If you're rolling terrible, you're super salty about it. At the end of the day, like we're
it's a game, right? And
it's a game.
And it's a game. There has to be a winner. There has to be a loser. And that's the thing. You roll dice. Someone's going to be happy and someone's going to be upset. I completely agree with you there. And that does take experience and wisdom to eventually be like, I'm running Scabskins. Did I think I was gonna roll 4 or greater every single time? No, you're gonna get dunked on by a 1 now and then. That's gonna end your turn or the game potentially. Like that's certainly an option. Out of curiosity, I mean, like it must have happened a million times, but like, how many times have you rolled a 1 and that just killed you on Blood Debt?
Well, so it used to be. I truly used to say the problem with Levia was you could not beat an X2 record even if you played perfectly, because at these like battle hardened level events, for example, you assume it's like 7-ish rounds, Levia would just lose to herself like 1 out of every 4 or 5 games. Something along those lines would just be, oh, that's the 1 into a 1. I just lose. Or like, oh, that's the hand that doesn't turn off Blood Debt. I just lose. Oh, I banish 3 with exactly 3 misses and like 20 hits, and I just lose. Like those games do happen. In the old Levia, I would say it was about once in every 5, that's a terrible place to be. In new Levia, I played 15 games across last weekend. Only 1 game was bad variance. Enough of bad variance for me to lose. 1 game out of 15. So holy crap, has that improved. And talking to everyone else on the team who was playing it as well, similar positions. Like a single tournament run was not decided by like multiple instances of like the deck punted, blah, 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 like it used to be. Now they're rare enough that it's like maybe once in a weekend overall. That's fantastic. So just everyone who's converting to Levia now, count yourself lucky. You didn't have to sit through that multiple times in a tournament. Now it happens like maybe the once.
Yeah, it's like
just rub it off. It's part of the game.
Like I'm old enough to have been in cars with no air conditioning, like in the middle of summer. I'm old enough to remember, getting the internet and like just homework just became so much easier. Like, like those kinds of days. But the Levia School of Hard Knocks, like, you paved the way, like, with your blood, sweat, and tears, figured out all the numbers, the minutia, the all of the hits and misses and such. You went through that gauntlet. You came out with scars and battered and bruised from it, and everybody else is benefiting from it, because those 1 in 5 games that were just, a bad dice roll are now 1 in 15, which in reality becomes, literally becomes 1 out of every 2 tournaments you'll have a bad game. And that is pretty good. I mean, look at how many times Briar will brick with 4 non-attack actions or something like that. It must feel like in the similar capacity. So I think there's a certain level of variance that is manipulable. Like, it's the same way where when you block with Reckless Swing, if you do it correctly, it's a hit every time, right? You know what you're doing, and we thank you for your service. I don't know how to better put it.
I got to thank LSS, because the solve is truly in the demi hero, and just to point out, like, the specific point in the game, right? Normally, if you played off of Arsenal at any point in Levia, you were at the risk of losing the game instantly on your next hand. It could just happen. You could just draw that hand of, like, Graveling Beast Within, Reckless Wreck-A-Romp or something, and you instant died. So playing off Arsenal was always terrifying, but it would just sometimes come up. Now you can purposefully take that point in the game of, I'm going to play off Arsenal because my next turn is my flip turn. And the amount of room that has given you to just play a, like, completely streamlined game is, holy crap, night and day. And then once you do flip, the consistency of, I can play a late game without needing scabs is also incredible, because the old late game in Levia was trying to reach a point with, like, Doomsday, you summon Blasphemous, you got to roll scabs like every turn to make that guy useful. And now the late game with Levia is just completely turned on its head, because you're, calling these extra cards from this whole, like, extra hand that you basically have out of your blood debt. The game has just flipped. The mid game transition into late game is so much more solid, so much more consistent. And that's thanks to LSS entirely. Like,
hey, they'll take it. They'll listen.
Probably.
They'll take it. We are getting questions from the community, and again, you being the Levia person, we want to get some of these questions through. This one from Samuel Pratt's asking, Levia got some support with Dusk Till Dawn, but still not winning tournaments. I think that's a little premature to say.
Oh my God,
it's been like 1 or 2. It's very unlikely she will get more cards anytime soon. That I can see. How do you see her in the near future? Have we lost a big opportunity to make her great? Now, big question here, because that is under the assumption that there was a missed opportunity, which I think you and I both agree that she probably got it just right.
Yeah. I think it would be egregious if all of a sudden, like, people who had never put time in Levia were just taking her and winning these events already. That would mean she was at a power level that was probably very unhealthy, because she's already teetering on the point of, she's just a raw damage deck. And so if she's too good, it's very uninteractive. It can be of just, I mean, my hand can only block 12 and you're going to throw 26.
Yeah.
Like that, those situations are not actually very fun, So if that was the kind of power level she was at consistently, without putting in the time, putting in the effort, that'd be terrifying. What we're seeing, though, is the players who were eager to flip over, Pat Eschke, Jesse Kennan, for example, with their 3 top 8s in the bag. I had the right record as well, bubbling out at Chicago. So the players who have the time and the dedication are making it, but they're missing on the actual win because they just need a little bit more time, a little bit more dedication. The deck's power level and their eagerness to play it and their eagerness to try to, like, get the reps in is meeting well enough for them to, like, push those top 8s now. But it does take real work to play the deck perfectly. And Pat will tell you all day long that he's learning every game he plays. I think those players who commit can start winning the events. We have not missed our window. She just got these cards, and already the first 3 events, she made top 8s in every single one. So I think this is, like, a healthy spot for her more than anything. Obviously, she's not trash. Obviously, she's not overpowered. She's good.
This is the thing. It's like, because there's what you said of, like, just if people can just pick her up and start winning tournaments without any prep, then I think that's bad design. And I agree with you. And the number one perpetrator of that was Starvo. Starvo was a hero where, any Tom, Dick, and Harry can just go ahead, find the cards, put them together, and probably do well, like come out with a positive record in any main tournament.
We got our wins, Flake.
Yeah, well, look,
yes, we did.
100%. And so just to sort of put two heroes next to each other, I busted my ass learning Prism within that meta of Starvo, Chain, etc. Because I thought, I was like, I'm going to take the hard route because I'm an idiot. Like, I don't know how else to explain it. I'm an idiot. I went to five pro quests. The first four were on Prism. I top 8'd 3 of them in the most grueling, most, self-flatulate. I don't know how to just smashing myself. Like, what am I doing? It was
you were wrestling Vincent before Vincent
correct.
was even
Yes,
out.
I put myself in the Iron Maiden and locked up the key. I made top 8s and I never got out of the first round because I would just get plastered by Starvos. And then I was like, what am I doing? I've got one left. I don't want to go through this grind. I sat with somebody for an hour who walked through the basic stuff about Starvo, and then I won the next pro quest with Starvo. It was but that's what we're talking about here, is that if Levia gets to that level, then it's just bad design, because anybody could pick up powerful cards and smash them together and do the basic math of, okay, I need this to pitch, the rest is to block. That can't be the right way. And I think that we both are on the same pace here of it's complex enough that it takes practice, but it's not OP or simplistic enough where any Joe Blow can just pick it up off of a Fabrary and say print deck list and I'm going to top 8 an event.
Yeah, and just to note, by the way, I think this point in the game is incredible for like that level of deck. I don't think there is anything close to obviously what Starvo was, but even just the Fabrary example you're saying, you can't even grab a Lexi list and just take it and win anymore. The decks right now are very hard, very challenging to play perfectly because the matchups are so different.
Yes.
And so that's really what comes to play. Like, sure, you can grab the Levia list, and if you play against, like, the training bot, you might think you got it, right? You play against Data Doll on Talishar, right? But to go into an event and have to deal with, like, for example, what I played at Chicago, 8 different heroes in 8 rounds is crazy. Like, what an amazing spot we're in for the game. Just to say for a second, I love that experience, right? Because that's where, when you do have the reps on a hero, when you do have all those the test games in, you're more prepared to take on a field that is that diverse, and that's really what's going to make the difference for any deck that's trying to perform right now. Is you need the reps, you need to have been in that seat against so many matchups in the field right now. You can't just copy a Dromai for one and think you can just walk an event with Dromai. My God, that deck plays different in every matchup. Icelander too, like every deck right now, right? It's a great spot to be.
It is, and I like that. It's not just about the diversity of the meta, but it's just exactly how those pieces connect with each other. And like you said, it's different for every single one. And it's not like you just go like there's sort of like this core tenet of card gaming and practice where you're like, am I the aggressor or am I the aggressor in this matchup?
Who's the beatdown?
Yeah,
right?
Who's the beatdown? Exactly. Who's the beatdown? Starvo was always the beatdown. There was no question about it, so that you played the game more or less almost entirely the same, and maybe Chain out races you. If you like misstep here or there, you get a bad hand. But this meta, this game right now, I feel you're welcome to pick up any single deck, any deck off of any tournament top 8, any list, and say this is a winning list. This has a history of success. It has a pedigree. I'm going to take it to a tournament, and then if you just don't practice, that you're just going to get slaughtered out there. And I think I honestly think that's a good thing.
Yeah, it's an excuse to play the game more.
Yes, that's a very good point. You're also in tune very well with the lore of Levia and ultimately a lot of Wraith. I got a question.
I don't know about that, but go for it.
Well, I'm just setting you up here. The magic of TV means that we can say this and people will believe it. The question from Sigma or DOS saying, do you think Levia survives the war, and will we have a different future in Fab lore, Or will we have a different feature in Fab lore for Levia? So I know nothing of the lore. Basically, in my mind, if it's not something that starts with star, I'm probably not paying too much attention to the nitty gritty. Trek, wars, all that. Give me any point in history, and I will tell you. Starvo, yes. I will tell you what shoes they were wearing in what scene. But this is like, for some reason, LSS and the world of Wraith, I don't dig too deep. But at least I would imagine you've got a nice little, sort of nest egg of Levia information. Yeah, she's right behind you, just watching over. There's the question: does she survive the war? And I guess my follow up is what war are we talking about? Because I don't know.
So there's the War of the Monarch, which is going on right now. That's the idea.
Yeah,
that's the idea, right? And the premise behind Dusk Till Dawn specifically is the set. The lore of the set takes place from dusk until dawn. That's the window of this battle, this climactic battle for the War of the Monarch, right? What we don't have yet is the full story of the true outcome. So I hope that we kind of get a conclusion to that, because if you go back to Outsiders, we still don't have any lore pieces dedicated towards Katsu or Benji. That was kind of left floating. So I would hope that we do see the full picture. The most recent lore blurb that came out for Levia really had nothing to do with the War of the Monarch. It was with the deck tech that came out recently, where some sorry soul tries to turn on her in a hallway, and then she spins around. They get freaked out by all her tentacles, and then sure enough, one lashes out, grabs him by the foot, drags him back in, and he gets eaten. That story has no real impact on the world of Wraith, but it was cool. It was cool. So I think in terms of her role in the story itself, last we know, she helped break down the walls to Solana by turning into Plasmafett Levia Consumed. Now in the game, you can only choose one or the other, redeemed or consumed. But in the lore, she went from redeemed to consumed. So it's unconfirmed if she can flip back to redeemed, or if it mirrors the game mechanic of she's gone now, Plasmafett consumed her. So it is a bit ambiguous. I would hope that since she didn't betray Plasmafett in the story, and in fact embraced his power, they've made some other pact at this point where she can flip flop, snip snap snip snap. So quote the Office. So I think she's fine. I think she's got control over destiny. She can go back to a more human form. She can just let it all go, turn into Plasma if she wants. In my head canon. Yes.
I am invested in this now, and again, part of it is because when it's presented as this gigantic wall of text, I meet it with the same kind of, thing in the back of my mind that says, basically whispers, you could be reading Star Wars. And I'm like, I could be reading Star Wars. What am I doing?
Tron trilogy? Let's go.
Oh, it's so good. And it's coming. Anyway, that's a whole other podcast. But you, in explaining it, I'm just like, and then what happens? And then what happens? So it's it's really good. But when you mentioned, obviously we don't know what happens to her in the war and whatnot. And the one interaction is that she just, eats this dude in a hallway. But what if that dude was holding, it's a war. Maybe he's holding some important war information. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I
was told, well, here you go. Here's an extra lore tidbit by LSS. I was told that she doesn't talk. Because I was trying to do for the reveal, get an idea of what VO I could do for Levia, and turns out she doesn't talk, not even in a redeemed form, right? So if that guy was carrying any notes, any war docs, that warmonger's diplomacy he had signed in hand, she couldn't read it. She's too far gone.
So she's an idiot. That's
whoa, hey, buddy. Idiots can still roll sixes. All right,
they could.
She's fine.
Yes,
fine.
Ask any Reinar out there. So I want to ask you real quick, and we're gonna probably, sorry everybody out there, we're gonna jam this behind the Patreon because that's what we do here. I want the best 3 tips about playing Levia from the Levia player himself. Give me 3 basically core values or things to keep in mind when you want to play Levia. And if you want to hear this, you gotta go to the Patreon at patreon.com/instantspeed. So Hit us with
I'm
it.
there.
You are there.
I'm there. I'm subbed.
And it's awesome. It's awesome. We're growing. It's great. We sort of had to do a little bit of a little sideways shuffle and sort of, but we're off on our own. We've left the nest and we're spreading our wings. But it's because of awesome people like you who support, and that I can now squeeze for very valuable information.
So, something along those lines. Put that all together, and you're on your way to playing Levia better than your average Joe. Still so tricky, such a complex deck to play, and that doesn't even go into the tips associated with like really planning for consumed and redeemed now, because I'm still learning all those myself. But from the beginning of her release to now, those 3 tips still should hold true.
Well, that's good. I mean, like as a nucleus to actually playing the hero, just knowing those kinds of little elements while you're going into it, and like you said, even from the get-go of just knowing where or evaluating that first hand and already coming up with paths and understanding what your limitations are is a huge part of that. So I really appreciate that, because I learned a lot just listening to that stuff. And I'm in no way ever going to play a hero that rolls dice. It's
Sure.
it's the worst thing in my life right now is just any kind of dice rolling. But knowing it and seeing it happen is very exciting, especially at the hands of somebody who essentially makes magic. You feel almost like I'm just gonna like make a comparison here. I feel like when I watch a good Levia player like yourself actually play the hero at the level that you played, it's like watching Scarlet Witch just adjust like the probabilities and reality and bending reality. But you get what I'm saying? Where, it's like, well, you got to banish 6, or you got to banish 6s, and you got to banish this, and oh my God, it's like, and meanwhile, you know that you've already warped reality to a degree where it's a minute percentage where you might fail, whereas the people on the other side have no clue how and it's such a fascinating thing. I'm like, in the PTI event at Cincinnati, I was playing in the quarterfinals against Mara, and Mara had drafted Levia. I was getting beaten down, but I had also just basically succumbed to the fact that she needs to clear her blood debt or she dies. So all I'm doing is protecting life total. Eventually, she's going to run out of options here. But it was getting close. Like, I was at 3 or 4. She hits me with, what is the Dread Screamer that gets go again?
Go again. Yep.
Yeah. And we're looking, and I'm like, okay, well, you've got like 16 cards or 15 cards in your graveyard. You've got 5 misses. And it's like miss. And then she just does one of these. And I'm like, okay, I'll block 5. I'll block out. And she's like, I still have an opportunity because I have another Dread Screamer. I'm like, you don't have an action point. And she's like, I don't have an action point. I lose. And we talked about it afterwards. I said, look, let's rewind it here, because I get it. Like maybe there's another out. And she's like, this is the only way. She's like, it's the only way to do it. And I feel like in Limited, it's a different beast, but at the hands of someone like yourself, you must, like, do you ever get a game where somebody on the other hand says, man, you just got lucky, when in your mind you're like, nah, doofus, like, this was how I stacked the deck?
Yeah, oh my God. So I love pitch stacking my wins. When I played Rhinar all last season, I fell in love with how easy it is for that hero to pitch stack. It's unreal. But Levia can do it to a different degree, where, especially in, like, the position where your opponent does just try to block you out and let you just run out of resources, run out of ways to turn off blood debt. In those games, it is on you to win the game or lose the game. Your opponent is just sitting there and saying, do you beat 12 block every hand? And right now there's like Bravo, there's Dorinthia, Dash can play that way a little bit too. Not like a tier 1 deck that's really looking to play that way, but you need to be prepared as the Levia player to play into that. And there's even some more mid-rangey decks like Briar can try as well, of if the Briar realizes they're not winning, then they're going to try to just like block with 3 cards, return a 0 for 4, get their embodiment, block for 3 cards, return to 0 for 4, keep up that kind of game plan. You need to be ready to beat the players who don't trade the way you were expecting and kind of let damage be dealt. Because Levia has this really interesting position where if I'm just no effort playing an Endless Maw, 2-card 9, playing a Dread Screamer hand, 3-card 12, and it doesn't cost me anything. It's like, that's the easy plays for the deck, right? And my opponent is just saying, yeah, eat it, give me. All of a sudden, my easy plays have ended the game. because they're at a life threshold now, whereas as soon as I see a blood rush, they're like in a must block scenario, and then all the tempos in my court, and I'm just going to slam them with another one, and they're just dead. So opponents who play into Levia really well can notice that and block out even earlier than you expect, because they understand that not every hand can even deal 12 in Levia. You know, you like it when those hands work, when you've got the go again from Art of War, Dread Scream, but not every hand. So you need to be able to beat those scenarios, and the pitch stack angle of that is definitely where it feels like I do get to skill express quite a bit in an end game. It's not just I can't win unless I roll a 6 because I need to break like the block 12 cycle. You don't need to play that way. You can set it up in your pitch stack. You can set up barragings, convulsions, either get your intims or dominates, whatever you're looking for, and really break the math on late game hands. And it feels so good. But sometimes you are in a position where, especially now with Redeemed, actually, this is kind of a funny thing. With Redeemed, you can turn off all your blood debt. So if you only win by rolling a 6 and you don't have gamblers anymore, you can just roll. If you roll a 1, you don't die.
Yeah.
So there have literally been positions now where I'm just going to roll every turn, because anytime I hit an action point, I'm not going to break their math. I'm still going to like throw my 6, but I'm out of Dread Screamers. So like I do still need to be trying that. But I know I'm only going to win off of a 6. But I know I'm also not going to lose off of a 1, which is like such a different late game than she's ever had before. And I did that for a Fatigue Dory game that I played at the Battle Hardened last weekend. I flipped in Redeemed. I dealt myself like 11 damage to flip to Redeemed. But the idea being, I need to not lose to a 1.
Yeah.
And so I just rolled scabs like every turn after the flip. Hit once, missed once, hit once, missed once, then hit the 6, won the game. It's interesting. It's interesting. The play lines now.
But you put yourself in that position. Like some of my favorite things are beating a player on Guardian, where eventually they'll just be like, "Oh, you got lucky to find a red chokeslam, a pummel, and 2 blues." I'm like, well, if you were paying attention, I pitched these half an hour ago in that order.
Yep.
You know, and it's they came back when, you know, there's a reason why I was protecting my life total so I could basically beat the piss out of you for the last 3 turns. Like that's kind of part of it. But I mean, stacking the deck also, that sort of also kind of equates to your graveyard as well. And this is a little bit of what I was alluding to, is that, you know, manipulating the odds in the same way that a friend of mine like Gabe Scher, who first introduced me to Reckless Swing and saying, all right, which one of these cards do you want to banish? And I was like, does it matter? He said, no, you lose the game. And I was like, okay, like it's cool.
Yeah.
But those kinds of plays where, you know, they're like, oh, there's like a couple misses in here. It's like, dude, it's statistically impossible for me to like screw this up. Like that's got to be a good feeling too.
Yeah, well, but the statistically impossible scenarios, trust me, they come up. they still come up. So when those happen, that's like the 1 in 15 game that we talked about earlier, where like you just got to stomach those. It's fine. But yeah, it is amazing when your opponent is like upset that you didn't hit the 3 misses, and you're like, buddy, like, did you want to play a game? Because if I hit the 3 misses, then like, why did we even sit down? You know, like, is that what you actually wanted? You actually wanted us to have like spent 30 minutes playing a game that didn't matter? Like, come on, dude. Some people really get that way, and that is the most tilting part about it. When they groan, you had 3 misses, like 20 hits, you flip, and you don't miss, and they're like, oh god, dude, did you want to play? I wanted to play. Oh my god, I can't with those people in particular.
To me, it's like, you know what? At a certain point, just clean out all the 6s, like get them all out of the way, because later on, eventually, you're gonna have to start peeling, and like the odds are better. Like there's no worse feeling than whiff 6. It's like, well, there goes all my opportunities.
Yeah. Oof,
you know,
those are the good ones.
Those are the good ones, absolutely. I want to shift gears here, because as great of a player as you are, you're also an excellent content creator. You're somebody who has really sort of moved the needle in terms of coverage and content creation and things like that. A community champion. I mean, I don't know how else to better express it. And this has essentially translated into an endeavor that you and a partner have now moved into called Savage Feats. And I want to let you at least explain what particularly that is, because I'm sure a lot of people who have caught your coverage, you know, might not know specifically, well, is Savage Feats something else? Is it you? Is it a name of a channel? Explain to us what Savage Feats is.
Yeah, so I mean, ever since I really started playing the game back in Michigan, like 2 years ago, I had an interest, at least, in just recording more events. Michigan had some great players. I felt like the games were always amazing quality. I was always having fun, and yet no one was really capturing gameplay. No one was streaming anything. So I started with, just my phone, just little webcams, whatever, to pick up and put that content out there because it just wasn't happening. And for a while, I was doing it just because, hey, like, this is cool. Like, I feel like these are really cool events. I hope people online think they're really cool events. But it wasn't anything more than that. It was just a way to kind of help Michigan make a name for itself, right? But that was all under me, like Sant. And Sant is not its own brand, at least not how I envision it. That's just me. Just like you are Flake, I'm Sant.
That's a weird thing that people have been like, they're like, oh, like this Flake brand. I'm like, what the hell? That's just it's like my name. It's just, it's who I am. Yeah.
I've just always used Sant for like every username ever because my last name is Van Sant. It's where it comes from. It's easy. So I never looked at my YouTube channel as like needing to be this brand that I was working towards, and like it needed to hit this mark, it needed to produce coverage, it needed to do this, that, whatever. But as we kept going with it, and I found that I absolutely loved the coverage aspect of what I was doing, because I was trying all different kinds of things, producing video series, doing streaming of just like Talistar gameplay as soon as like that kind of came out, deck techs, whatever. My favorite part of it was coverage because it felt like I could really learn in that field and like try to just become better at coverage because there were bars set by things like other professional card games, like you watch like a Pokemon event or something, a Magic event. Those always looked so fantastic, and I felt like it was within my means to try to learn as much as I could to get there. Whereas if you're just making a deck tech, just like putting out a video, that can kind of be any quality and it's good, right? Because all people want is like your expertise. You are talking about the deck. You are presenting this build, whatever, and that can just work. But for me to kind of satiate what I wanted out of like this learning process of YouTube was to pursue better coverage and like try to learn everything I could there. And I got to a point where I was probably biting off too much, or what was the expression? Biting off more than I could chew, right? Yeah. Because rolling up and like wanting to just stream an event has a lot of implications of like, okay, well, who's your point of contact on the floor? Who are you working with through the event? Like how are you solving internet? That was a freaking big one, right? So as I tried to tackle bigger and bigger events, not just like the Pro Tour, or not the Pro Tour, like the ProQuest and RTN circuit that I'd done locally in Michigan, but moved on to, hey, like these battle hardens that I'm traveling to as a player don't have coverage. What if I try to do that coverage? Because in my head, like I'm traveling for the RTNs, I'm traveling for the ProQuest. I'm also traveling for the battle hardens. Maybe I could try streaming those too, because I was doing the lower tiers anyway. So we tried that, and I absolutely loved it. It was so challenging, like so unbelievably challenging to run a show that lasts that long, to really have that viewer base that really cares about like that event, because it's the singular event on that weekend. It's not just like one of many ProQuests that are happening. So, maybe Michigan players are watching the stream, but to all of a sudden have a huge audience watching these battle hardens, that almost kicked it into overtime for me. This whole thinking of like, oh, I've got to make it better. I've got to just learn more. I've got to fix the holes that I know how to fix, and then learn to fix the holes that I can't fix yet, just and keep improving. So I feel like in a very short amount of time, streaming just like took over my life. I was trying to get better gear, better prepared, better equipped, better working relations, like everything I could do to make the streams top quality, in a world where I was still treating it like a passion project, right? Where I'm still doing it because I just love it. And I'm like really intrigued by this whole process of just getting better, right? And that kind of had its own issues of, well, doing it all as a passion project is really cool and all, but now I'm in a space where there are real businesses at work, right? And recently at this last Pro Tour with LSS, I had a conversation with James White and Trevor that was very similar, of kind of like voicing the problems that I was also experiencing of, you're in this space as a passionate fan, but you're trying to play the role of like a business. So we need to talk like businesses in this situation. So that needs to happen before we can solve any other problems, right? And that really struck me and made me realize, holy crap, like, it's cool to be doing the coverage thing. I like it a lot, but if I'm taking it serious, it needs to be its own endeavor. It doesn't need to be tied to me. Like, that was never the point anyway. It was just my passion project. It was never what, like, Sant had to be. So to split it off was very much within, like, I guess my wheelhouse. I was ready to do it. I just needed to find a partner who could help me fill the holes that I was really bad at, which was the business part of it. And so I met Nathan from Savage Land News from some draft testing that we were doing prior to Pro Tour. So we had already been talking, hanging out, and I basically told him about this conversation in a bit of a floundering moment, and he was my savior. He legitimately said, "Look, I've got experience in this. I like run a side business anyway. If we partner on this, I think we can work together. I think I can plug your holes." And he's another passionate creator in the space that would, kind of like marry our intentions and just like still make this about being the best Flesh and Blood product we could make it, more than just making this a business that makes money. That still wasn't like the first goal. It's something that needs to happen later. But the first goal was like, look, this is great for Fab. Let's do what we can to make sure it lasts. So he joined the project, and we launched Savage Feats, which truly is its own production company, taking all the experience I've learned in the years of now covering events and getting better at the back end process of what live production takes on not just like the OBS level, but coordinating with the floor judges and all the pre-work and the pitch decks, the logistics that you have to solve with the venues. I still never solved the Wi-Fi. That was shout out to Team Ascent, Nick Bova. He hooked me up on that. But now even that's solved, so everything's going so much better. And I'm really excited for the future of Savage Feats, because the idea is really to just make Savage Feats last in its own world. It needs events, because then the more events it can cover, the more opportunities there are for sponsorships. It needs independent TOs to want Savage Feats to cover their events, because same deal, like it kind of needs to exist in its own space and not like bleed too much money. And those opportunities are actually coming up. People really do appreciate the product, and it's incredible. I'm about to actually be in your neck of the woods, Flake, and stream Red Riot Games Canadian Nationals, not as Sant, but as Red Riot Games, who hired Savage Feats to run production on their channel. Like, that's a beautiful marrying of passions. And that was kind of the entire idea, but it was a bit gated by the fact that I was doing it before, like so clearly as me, I'm very happy with the split. It's opened a lot of doors. As you've seen from the Battle Hardened Cincy coverage, I'm still trying to push the envelope on not just like what we've seen in the streaming world for Flesh and Blood, but in what is a truly mobile, and you wouldn't believe how just like mid-tier my equipment is. It is not the fancy stuff.
Don't pull the curtain back too far, because a lot of people think that there's like a lot of things going on in the background because of the quality being so good. So don't sell yourself short. Don't let people know that it's like a hamster on a wheel in the background. Like that's not where we're at.
It's close. Not quite the hamster. I didn't say low tier. We did upgrade for a bit. But like truly, it's still just what I'm really passionate about, what I really want to get better at. And so every opportunity to stream for me, even though it's not monetarily very rewarding, maybe one day it will be, but not right now.
Yeah.
It's still a passion project. It's still what I personally want to get really good at. And it's what I've actually tried to pivot even my real life into potentially looking for opportunities with. Was looking for broadcasting jobs the other day. Like, who knows? Maybe.
Dude.
Maybe it would work out.
It all starts somewhere, and this is the tough part about this kind of stuff, because like you said, when you realize that you're doing this out of the motivation, the fire in your belly of passion, and then you eventually have to intersect with some like an entity or a roadblock or some sort of partnership that they are essentially approaching it from the perspective of business, that becomes difficult to kind of realize. It's like, dude, I just want to do this because I want to do it. And they're like, well, there's, XYZ plus, 19 other letters that you got to worry about in order just to get an opportunity or to do it, the right way. And there's so much learning curve, and there's so many hiccups that are going to occur, and it's a lot of it is just because you don't know. And like I went through this a lot as well, where you do certain things and you approach it because you just love it and you want to do it, and eventually somebody's going to say like, yeah, but do you have a registered name, or do you have your trademark, or is your logo this or whatever? And like as soon as you make that shift to becoming a business, an entity, and like you said, it's a brand, and it's so fucking weird to say when you're like, I'm just me, but people see me as a brand, and you're like, it just kind of sends you over the top of everything you're doing, where you have this like third person view, and you're like, holy shit, I guess I'm kind of like a brand, but like I never intended to be. I was just doing what I love to do. And the tough part about this is when you have to essentially shift gears into business mode, because you have to be that person. And when that intersects with other people who have to shift into business mode, it becomes difficult. And one thing that, I'm sure it's not much like you and I had that kind of friction to a degree when it came to this, wherein we both love each other, but like we're both friends, but it comes to a part where there's that initial thing where both you and I are so new at this kind of stuff that we both don't know what the hell we're doing. And it becomes difficult because relationships that you have, it's like for like myself and 93 Media and our split, that was Business Flake and Business 93 Media that had to make a decision that was best for both people, and then that's it. On the side, like outside of that, we're both still friends, and it's all good, and there's no bad blood and whatever. And I also want to take this opportunity that if there's any people who may have caught wind of like ill will, I love you to death, and I tell you this, I hopefully enough.
We give each other many hugs. Yes.
We do, and I told you this. Like you said, there was like a difficult moment that you had at the Pro Tour that kind of shifted your gears, and it was tough for a lot of people. And I don't think a lot of people were really all that confident in a lot of things, but here we are, where you have essentially propelled yourself through your own hard work, your blood, sweat, and tears, and your passion for the game to the benefit of thousands of people who tune into your streams. What people might not realize is that you're probably still, when you get paid for what you do, you're still paying off the work you did 6 months ago for prepping and getting all this stuff and the hard work that you don't get paid for. And a lot of people look at me and say, oh, you get paid so much to do this casting. Well, there's years of stuff that I did to get to this point that I'm still paying off, and that in my mind, I don't feel guilty getting paychecks and whatever. And ultimately, all this to say is that there's no animosity, there's no bad blood. You and I mean, unless there's something you want to say right now, like I'm not trying to.
I got nothing.
Exactly.
No.
I love you dearly, and I know that some people had approached me and said like I think that you're treating him too. I'm like, I love the guy. Like we had a disagreement about certain things, but ultimately I root for your success because, also selfishly, your success leads to the success of the game. And when the game succeeds, people like you and I also succeed. And then the beneficiaries are the people who tune into your brilliant streams and get to watch high-level Flesh and Blood that they otherwise would have no fucking idea what was going on until the deck lists were printed and it was tweeted out. So please let me say thank you for all your hard work. And I really, really hope that you understand that I love you to death, man. And I think that what you do is incredible, and right now it's unmatched. And I think that that's important. For what you do, there is nobody out there who can do it like you. So keep chugging, man, because there's too many people that rely on you for what you do.
Well, thank you, Flake. I do feel the love all the time from the community, and that's what keeps it going. Because you can talk about these paychecks, I still have only seen one.
Yeah.
It was a nice one, but every other time we're grasping a little bit. So it really does come down to the support that people like you show, just in appreciation. The people who tune in, my God, like the amount of like tweets and comments that come out in the wake of an event, just saying, well done, like you're improving. People notice that, and it means a lot because that's what I'm in it for. Like I just want to keep getting better. And people have finally noticed I'm really working, like I'm really trying. And I think to most producers' credit, they don't get that credit most of the time. Like, for example, the Min-Max stream, you guys crushed it on the cast, but also shout out to the people who propped up all the cameras, all the setup, went out to the venue. I went behind the curtain. There were like 2 or 3 people working on the stream.
Yeah.
And those people deserve a lot too. And it means the world to even get a fraction like of that love and support, because I don't really put my face on the streams now, especially not with them being Savage Feats. But I think the community still is incredibly supportive, and I appreciate that a lot. So thank you, Flake.
So, no, I'm just gonna reflect this back at you because it's hard work that I think a lot of people might have misconceptions about what kind of work goes on behind the scenes. Like they tune in, like there's a countdown stream, there's a countdown timer, there's a tweet they plug in, and it's like any other stream that they see. But what they don't understand is all the lugging of equipment, the connections that you have to make, the making sure that, like, I cannot fathom. I spent a week with the boys from 3 Floating, and they just needed to record one video. And it was like, okay, well, we need to record a 1-hour video, so there's going to be we need about 6 hours of the day. We need to set this up, do this, record the B-roll, do all this stuff and whatever. And then Aiden from 3 Floating is going to spend probably about 40 hours editing this. And I was like,
They are something else, though, to be fair.
Oh,
like they are insane, the amount of work. And even the fact that this one blew my mind. They're willing to just record crap audio because they know how to fix it in post. And it might take however many hours, but they know how to fix it and they'll do it. And I'm over here like, you sure you want like the phone microphone picking that up? That doesn't, we'll fix it. We'll fix it in post. And they do. It's just, whoa, my
Dude,
God.
that is all
Incredible.
Aiden. That is all Aiden. And no offense to Sam, but I know who the foundational pillar of pushing that stuff out, because Sam is immaculately talented. Jacob, same thing. Both of them, super energy. Aiden is funny. He's an awesome guy. He's so energetic in these videos as well. But at the end of it, I could just see it in his eyes when he realizes that he's like, yeah, I gotta be clicking like levers and bars and dials up and down for the next 30 hours so that I can get an hour-long video where you could hear him say, "Holy crap!" like, properly, kind of things like that.
You want a funny behind-the-scenes story?
Yes, I do. Obviously.
Them. So at Battlehard and Cincy, we stayed together, right? But the last day, like on Sunday, when you were busy getting second place at the PTI event,
casual,
I went back to the house and was jamming with the 3 Floating guys to record a video, and we were doing the behind the scenes, or not the behind the scenes, but like the what do you call that when you just like talk one-on-one with the camera? That scene.
Yeah, like the sort of side, like the interview, like the retrospective.
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
like
stuff.
the retrospective part, right? And that portion, I was trying to like collect myself, trying to gather my thoughts. Like, okay, what scene are we gonna look at? Okay, I think I know what I want to talk about. Can you make sure we scroll to that point? Okay, yep, I got that. And then I would try to deliver it as one take. And both Sam and Aiden were like, oh my, dude, so good, man. Yeah, this is awesome. And in my head, I'm like, really? I don't know. I don't think I did anything that unique, I just collected my thoughts. But then I watched Sam. Whoo! And Sam is just off the cuff, just nope, retake, nope, never mind, retake, like just non-stop pouring. And in my head, I'm thinking, oh my God, Aiden, you're gonna have to roll through like 50 attempts of Sam to get out this like one sentence. Oh my God.
So when we were
it's hilarious.
They recorded a fight night in Ohio in this like awesome cabin that we had out there, and they wanted to do like record their Realm Games commercial, and they're like, "Flake, can you be part of this?" I said, "Yeah, sure. Like, what do you need? I don't care." And they're the same way that they kind of completely pumped your tires and said, "Awesome take, well done, super great." I was like, "Oh yeah, fuck yeah, like sign me up, like I'm gonna go and I want to be in a movie now." And then Sam is just like absolutely just destroying it and using all of these like technical actor lingos with Aiden, and he's like, hard cut, quick pan, this, that, bing bang boom. I'm like, fuck are you guys talking about? Like, is this English? I don't know. It literally came down to like, tell me where to stand and the lines you want me to say. I don't know when that video is going to get published, but all this to say that my acting debut, according to Sam and Aiden, pretty good.
You did pretty good. I did see it. I saw the behind the scenes.
Okay.
Make me hungry just thinking about it. Like,
long story short, I shove a gigantic hot dog in my mouth, and that is probably, well, you don't know to what capacity, but there's a lot of extra Easter eggs. But yeah, those guys are awesome. But like, can you just sort of pull the curtain back? Let's say, we'll use Canadian nationals, because this is probably going to be one of the biggest challenges for you, because you're also crossing the border to do your stuff. Walk us through, as sort of Cole's notes as you could possibly make it, how to go from just this, like, what happens when you're like, okay, we're going, to the point where bam, we're live.
Oh yeah. So normally my crunch time is like a month out. So for Canadian Nats, I'm a little behind because no, I'm not behind yet. We're still in a month out territory. Not bad. Never mind. But normally about a month out is when, for example, if it's SCG, I will send out like a very comprehensive pitch deck of, here's the vision. Here's what you can draw on as a reference point, like from our last event. Here's what's going to need to change for this event. Here's like the floor plan of what I'm going to need. Here's like the point of contacts that I'm going to need on the floor for the day. Here's like the staff that I'm going to be bringing. Here's like my outlet needs, like yada yada. Everything to do with like the physical setup and like my personnel, I lay out to the T for SCG. I haven't sent this pitch deck out to Canadian Nats yet, which is why we can't use it as a full example, because we're not at a month out yet. That'll come in like a week. Yeah, so there's an in-depth behind the scenes there, which is much more professional than I used to do it, because before it was just an email of like, hey, is the streaming area available? Okay, cool, I'll go. Well, had some issues with that. Anyway, doing it the right way is really working this time. It's more work, right? It's about coordinating very early on with like who my casting team is going to be. Normally, the plan was to try to stick with local to save costs, but a lot of people are really excited about Savage Feats and kicking off some big battle hardens. So we got some bigger names than I was really expecting early on, but those all went amazing with Punkage, Sam, and even freaking Brody joining. But that's normally something that also happens to some degree. There isn't like a real process there. It's more like who reaches out, who can I afford, because I pay the casters before I pay myself. I literally walked away from Cincy with still negative money. We're still fixing that. Yeah, so I have to have all that still planned before the pitch deck is sent out. Once that's away, it's a bit of a waiting time. If they come back with any problems, if SCG says like, no, it can't be this, it has to change, whatever, I'll compensate to some degree, but then the like kind of refresh of assets normally takes place where I just have to go through, like rebuild the OBS, make sure anything that didn't work last time is patched up, anything that I've learned since the previous event is added, changing the overlays slightly from whether it's like a slight adjustment for like whatever set is current, like Outsiders to Dusk Till Dawn transition just happened, so like slight things change to kind of marry that from one set to the next. And also with different events come different formats. So like Battle Hardened Baltimore was the team event. So my structure for that was very different in terms of what we need to be covering, how the cameras need to be mobile, because we're covering like the deck build and the games. And then we also need to be able to pivot and cover the side games if the main game isn't the deciding factor. So that was a whole different build than how the most recent one at Cincy was, which was just a CC event, right? So all that is kind of happening in like the last week and a half out before the event itself, is when I normally send over assets to the casters and make sure that they are tuned into like, this is kind of the look and feel. Here's what I can contribute in terms of like segments, but host capabilities are host capabilities. I still leave a lot of that up to, well, in the last event, Sam. But I'll prep like the segments that we saw last time with the ham sandwich hardball, the fab event codes, that kind of thing. Then I do like a hard test of everything, plug it all in my table back here, all the lighting, all the cameras, on different outlets, just in case there was something going on weird there, as it would be at the event, with the 75-foot extension cables, even though we're all just in one room, just to full system test everything, right? I'll do a test stream for like an hour, make sure nothing's glitchy, make sure the OBS is fine, then deconstruct it all, pack it up into the bags, which are amazing. Like, oh my God, I've gotten the packing system down to just the finest degree it's ever been, which is, just such a relief. It used to be a jumble of wires and things floating around. And as I've transitioned to Savage Feats, the idea does need to be that these are capable of flying, not just like me driving, because some events are farther away. And while these are all airport like grade bags, like they're rifle cases, actually, all of them. So the padding is really thick. They're really like thick plastic casing on the outside. The packing that I was doing was not fit for airplanes. Now it is. Now I've got like custom cut fab foam like cutouts for everything. There's different layers in each box to make sure nothing's like too loose. I've got like a loom for all the cables now. Just all that has finally gotten sorted. So I pack it all up, make sure it's nice and tidy. Normally then just pack it in the car. Most things for SEG are on the East Coast, so they're drivable within like 8-ish hours. I love listening to audiobooks, or as I call them, I still call them books on tape. That's a little telltale sign of my age there, Flake. I still call them books on tape. But yeah, I love listening to audiobooks, so I don't mind the long drives. And then I'll get to the venue, normally like midday on a Friday, go unload everything. It is 3 bags, so it's not super easy for one person, but just take multiple trips, it's fine. So I then unpack it all at the venue, try to make sure all the wires are zip tied, taped down, whatever needs to be done to stay, to make them as discreet as possible, right? On Friday, I don't do much of like a systems test. I just kind of do like set up the tech itself, wake up early on the Saturday to go turn on all the cameras and like make sure the OBS is like set for the day, and make sure the casters have their coffee, like they're warmed up, whatever. We do, just all the audio tests, system tests, because there's no expectation that the casters help for setup and teardown. I can't afford that. They only show up for the day, So then the event actually happens, and me as the producer role, I'm coordinating with the floor person, which most recently was Maddie at Battlehard and Cincy, and she was the most fantastic floor person I've ever worked with. So that was an amazing lift, because if the communication there falls apart, it is so tough to just be like, oh my God, where's our feature? What's happening? Where are the standings? When there's a clear line of communication with someone on the floor, like, hey, we're calling table 3 for feature. Hey, we need standings. Hey, I need the meta. And I'll work on all like making the graphics, pushing that all out. I've also got the producer headset on, so I'm relaying everything that I have on my end with, kind of this, Professor X style, just control I have
like
over it all.
In
I'm
Cerebro, yeah.
Exactly. I've got the producer headset on, so I've got like the audio ducking. I can talk to the casters without the stream hearing me, so I'm constantly chattering with them, which is something that I think you and Brendan Patrick have commented before is like a huge learning curve. I feel it now.
Yeah.
Like I put so much stress onto whoever's casting, and I don't mean it, but it's just like, it's so hard to have someone like talking at you in the middle of I get it now. I do get it now. And I'm not even the one who has to deal with it. I'm the one doing it.
Dealing with like, who's new. Like if you're ever watching a stream and all of a sudden somebody just completely stops dead in their tracks mid-sentence, it's because the producer's like speaking to them in their ear to say, okay, we have this slide coming up, or we need you to just vamp for like an extra like 60 seconds because we're not ready to like, move to the game or whatever. Now, the first time that happened to me, I was like, what the hell's going on? I thought I was getting like instructions from NASA. I was like, what? I'm like, okay. Like it can catch you off guard. It's the it takes a little bit of experience to just listen to that while you just shift to autopilot, listen to what the hell they're saying, and then try to come back as seamlessly as possible. But yeah, that's definitely a learning curve.
You know what it reminds me of? Did you ever play trombone?
Not trombone, no.
Not sure. Okay, well, actually, this should be for any horn, honestly. But the when you finally like reach that tipping point of being able to breathe and blow at the same time, where you can like pocket air in your cheeks, breathe in through your nose, and like keep it continuous. That's what it reminds me of, because like you're saying, to pause and stop talking does. Or rather, that's like not how you necessarily want to handle that moment. You want to somehow keep it going.
Yeah,
listen to the producer, factor that in. But for the newer people, you do have to just stop. Your brain can operate that way.
I have been told that I am capable of both sucking and blowing all at the same time. That has been something that has been criticism I have received. But ultimately, you've got this whole system going. You're set up at the actual event. You've done all your tests. You've got everything locked and loaded. You've communicated with, or you've connected with like the person on the floor. In this case, you said it was Maddie, who I think is freaking amazing, by the way.
Yes,
it's no secret how I am a huge Maddie fan, because when she's there, like everything just, they just set up the whole thing for a massive success where nobody is worried about anything. But anyway, wrap it up. Let's go to the point where, no, I'm not saying to hear you out, to sort of hurl you along. I'm just saying, like, you've got all the things going here, and to you, I would imagine that most of the work from up till that point is like done, whereas most people who are tuning in are just getting started.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, once I go to the event, I feel great now. The process is a lot better now. I literally, the night before Cincy, woke up laughing because my dream was so carefree. I normally would go to bed the night before stressed out of my mind. So we're on quite a flip now, which is really nice, because I've got confidence in the gear now. It's tried and tested so many times. I know I'm putting the work in prior to it to make sure everything is set up, so I can show up to the day, kind of run things just in that backseat role of making graphics, queuing all the animations, building the overlays, updating everything, queuing the pop-up cards, whatever. And I just kind of get to watch the event. There's work ongoing, and there's a lot of pre-work ongoing, and I do have to be the one who still puts out fires. But man, there are so few fires now. So my event experience is incredible now. The day of is the easiest part. Because then the second day is just tear down, pack everything back up, and that's it. Like that's the process. We then look at the next event, and in theory, the events are like once a month, so there isn't that much downtime. So the days where I'm like not streaming on Mansan or something, I promise you, I am working on some other part of this entire process. There's a lot that goes on, but I like for the Canadian Nats, there are going to be new challenges that I haven't really had to tackle yet, because this is the first time I'm building it to match someone else's branding, and so it needs to be not up to my standards but theirs, and working with a casting team that is kind of more in charge of the run of show than me, right? I'm just there to like make the tech work and make sure that visually it's stunning, and whatever I can do in that regard. So this one's going to be quite different, and the crunch time hasn't really started on that one, but I'm hoping it's incredible. And I think the window on Canadian Nats is going to be really interesting, because it's the week. Is it the week exactly after US Nats, or 2 weeks after?
I believe it's so US Nats is the 26th, 27th. It's 2 weeks after, but I think it might be like the last week for nationals.
Yeah,
it might be like the last sort of bastion of hope for certain heroes to LL, if the potentially.
Well, so either way, the window is obviously following US Nats, and to have that as like such an obvious comparison is going to be, I hope, a challenge in a good way. Of okay, like obviously SCG has a lot of money, great production value, that's tried and tested now. They will be putting on a show. We're not expected to really compete with it, but we're going to try, and we're going to see what we can do. And I have a lot of faith in Canada. Let's go. And
Hey,
it's going to be awesome.
I've been saying Canada, let's go for like 2 freaking years. It's like, I will say this: the previous two, last year's nationals was a drastic improvement on the first one, which doesn't say a whole lot. That we've had some stinkers, unfortunately. They're getting better. It just seems like the competitive Flesh and Blood in Canada it starts and stops at the players, I find, and I'm really not the events. And I'm really hoping and rooting for you to go in there and essentially just whip them into shape. I don't know how else to better explain it, but just basically say like, okay, like playtime's over, like stop messing about. Like we're gonna put on a good show and put you in a better light. But I have been beating the drum of trying to improve things in Canada when it comes to events in general, having them, and beyond that, just saying like, let's put a production company into this stuff. Like, and I'm glad that you're there, and I think that we deserve to have that kind of passion and care that you so eloquently exude, and we appreciate that for you, and I'm excited for it. Beyond that, though, I have one more question to sort of lead into. Is this one? It's from Jack Crozer asking, what are your ultimate goals with Savage Feats? And beyond that, I also want to just bridge the gap between Savage Feats and your own content creation, and how those challenges, how do you balance and all that stuff regarding your own content creations, your own motivation and the energy it takes. But start off, I guess, with where you see Savage Feats in a few years from here, ideally.
Well, so the idea is Savage Feats, it truly is an LLC. I mean, we got it, it's got its paperwork now, documents are signed, it's in a good spot. But what it needs to do is just be self-sustaining. It needs to generate enough money at each event to pay its casters, first and foremost. Like that's what has to happen at every event. And then, in theory, make enough money to pay me. And then, in theory, make enough money to pay the overhead cost of like what Nathan and I have put in from previous, not just counting like what my work on a project is. So that's the goal with Savage Feats is make sure it reaches that point of self-sustainability, because the operating costs are actually really not that high. Like I said, I'm not working with the most magnificent equipment. I'm not working with, a huge production team. My footprint is very small. It's all mobile, right? So to kind of scale the costs around supporting that structure is hopefully within our means, and within the means of like what Flesh and Blood can also sustain, because Flesh and Blood it's growing, but it's not the behemoth that, can tap me for like, oh, hey, like cover a Gen Con, we'll pay you this much money and that can like let you sit for a year. It's not that, it's not that. So that's really where Savage Feats needs to be. It needs to be self-sustaining, but it doesn't have to generate profit. It just needs to exist. The profit, if that comes in time, like in the years that we're hoping to put into this, that's great, because the energy and the passion, the time is going to go there. But what it needs to exist is just to meet its costs. And luckily its costs are not like super high. So anything beyond that is obviously fantastic. And anything beyond that is really what Nathan is for. Because for me, I was happy doing this all for a hard loss. Not happy at first, but in the end, that was the reality. And I still stuck with it. But Nathan is really here to rein it in as a real functioning business, and manage it well. And he is a really smart dude and knows what he's doing in that regard. So I have full faith, mostly in him, because I'm not that guy, but he's that guy. And so with him on board, we'll be fine. But anyway, on my side of things as Sant, I mean, like we talked about earlier, that's just me. It's just my online name. So Sant is just whatever I'm up to, right? For 2 years, it's been Levia. Maybe tomorrow it'll be Bolton. A gentle plug. I will be streaming Bolton in honor of Tall Timmy. The Sant brand doesn't have needs. It isn't a brand. Sant me doesn't have needs. I'm just going to play the game I enjoy. And I have been very fortunate in having outlets to be able to share my passion for the game, share my enjoyment for the game, and interact with the community, which for me is the biggest win. The interaction points that come with having a YouTube channel, that come with streaming. I don't live in a very like fab dense area, you know. I live in upstate New York now, and if I want to go to an armory, it's a bit of a drive, and they tend to be pretty small, you know. So it doesn't quite satiate my fab fix. It doesn't. But what does is sticking with the content creation, is doing the streaming. And so for me, it's like my social needs. As long as I want to talk with people, as long as apparently you want to listen to me, I'll be there. And just having fun, right? That's all I need. I need to have fun. I need to enjoy the game. And so far, there's no reason to ever think about changing that pattern. It's all going well. But you can see how they're separate.
Sure.
They're very separate. Nothing with money, nothing with finances needs to come from Sant, but Savage Feats does. And that's a hard reality, actually, because before, when I was doing streaming under Sant, I had the same perspective of like, well, it doesn't really need to, you know, like, I'm still just doing it for fun. It has no needs. But in reality, Savage Feats has needs, and if they're not met, then it was a failed experiment. But it had fun while it lasted, you know, and we're gonna try our best while it lasts.
So
if it doesn't, it doesn't. Yeah.
All this to say, you're not rich, as many people think that.
No.
People think that I'm like rolling in it. I'm like because I can't. Like, are you out of your mind? I mean, you know how much ramen I've eaten in the past like 2 calendar years. It's a passion-driven thing, and I think that I don't want to be anywhere else, and I don't think that I doubt you do too. I think that you wouldn't be putting in the work that you do if you didn't love it. And the thing about that is people can truly read that off of you, your content, your demeanor, your presence, etc. And that is an important element, because there's a lot of people who do things for the clicks, that do it for the clout or the this or the that. And I think that lacking, like when you lose that genuine approach and you start doing it because, and there's nothing wrong with that, because a lot of people will do these things because it does translate to sponsorship, opportunity, etc. But what I think a lot of people immediately get from you is that this is something that you love. This is something that you'd probably be doing anyways. And you wouldn't, the second a lot of people get into this stuff and realize that they have to operate at a loss, or it's not worth their time, they dump it because it's like, well, I'm not making any money. I think that what you do and the toil that you put into your craft is now, I don't want to say is now paying off. I'm just saying, like, it's the right trajectory, because
on the way to paying off.
Yes.
So I go to bed at night. I feel like it.
The pillars that you have essentially established this on are of passion, are of you know, that kind of core tenets that are not necessarily at risk of crumbling should you know, have a bad month, or you miss an event, or something happens, that the fire still burns, and we feel that. So everybody else, wish you the best on this, because when you succeed, it's good for us, and that is important. So we're pulling for you, man.
Thank you. Thank you.
No worries. Anything else you wanna sort of kick around before we pull the chute on this one?
You know, we've covered a lot of topics here. I feel I was talking about my fab fix. I think I've reached it for the day, Flake.
I know. I was looking at the clock, and your poor partner who is preparing dinner and it's probably like, yeah, it's probably giving you death ray stare, which I will bear the brunt of. Ethan, I love you, buddy. I hope that you truly feel that, and everybody, the community, loves and appreciates you. And I will just again sort of hammer that point home. So thank you so much for doing this show, and thank you again for just bringing that kind of content to us.
Absolutely. Well, deep thanks for having me, Flake. I'm glad we finally got the date in the books, and we did it. We executed.
Damn right.
This was a lot of fun. I was looking forward to it all day. So really, thank you.
It's my pleasure. And to everybody listening, thank you so much. Why don't you tell people where they can get more Savage Feats, more Sant? Where is the best place to reach out?
Well, Sant on YouTube is where I post Honestly, who knows anymore? It's a lot of like random ass deck tech. Sometimes I got my friends on, but most consistently, what I do is stream on Talishar. So if you like that content of just whether it's background noise, whether you want to learn about Levia, or if you want to follow me as I stumble through new decks, I do a lot of that. Or if you want to find Savage Feats, which focuses on just the best content we can try to put out for the whatever event is next upcoming, which I think right now is still the slew of like SCG Battle Hardens. There's Canadian Nats coming up. The Canadian Nats one is going to be on Red Riot Games channel itself. The SCG Con events will be on the Savage Feats channel, which you can find on YouTube. But if you see an event coming up and it doesn't have coverage, maybe ask the TO if they want to ask me to try to help. That's kind of the whole idea. And then, yeah, that's kind of where I exist, those two fronts. And I'm also traveling to Worlds and Nats, I guess, so you'll see me there.
Beauty. Awesome stuff. Well, there you go, friends. Again, Ethan Van Sant from Savage Feats, Man Sant himself here on ISP. And I want to thank, again, our sponsors at Kayfabe Cards. Go to kayfabecards.com. Be who you want to be. Damn right. Hit it again.
Be who you want to be.
Beautiful. Somewhere Sam O'Byrne is like, yeah, good job, yeah, awesome, yeah. And, of course, to our Patreon subscribers, of which I have one here. That's where that goes. You can go ahead and go to patreon.com/instantspeed and support the channel. Lots of content, extras, and little tidbits there that hopefully you will enjoy. And ultimately, you can go to barrygoodembroidery.com/ISP to get some ISP merch if that's your jam. Besides that, you're not losing if you're learning. We'll see you next time on Instant Speed.
Well,